Did you know that the family who found FedEx was once at the verge of going bankrupt? Then, they took the last $5,000 of their dying company's money and won $27,000 at a blackjack table in Vegas to revive themselves. But who was this family? Well, in this video, we're talking not just about them, but 7 other similar wealthy dynasties that now own Tennessee. And before we get into the list, remember this. The family sitting at number 1 will simply blow your mind. Let's begin. Number 8. The Kelly family. The land baron and the eccentric. We open with the most unusual entry on this list. Not the richest or the most powerful, but almost certainly the most interesting person to sit next to at a dinner party. Brad Kelly made his fortune the old-fashioned way, by selling something he personally never used. In 1991, he founded Commonwealth Brands, a discount cigarette manufacturer. He doesn't smoke, never did. He built the company anyway, scaled it methodically, and in 2001, sold it for $1 billion in cash. Then he did something that nobody in his position typically does. He walked away from business almost entirely and started buying land. Not just a few square feet, but a lot of land. We're talking over 1 million acres across multiple states, making him the 9th largest private landowner in the entire United States. His Tennessee holdings alone place him among the most geographically influential private citizens in the state. His net worth sits at $1.4 billion, and most of it is tied up in dirt, which, if you understand long-term asset appreciation, is not a bad place to have it. But the lifestyle details are what make Kelly genuinely compelling. He does not use email. Not as an affectation, not as a temporary thing, he runs his billion-dollar operation entirely through phone calls and in-person meetings. He has been spotted wearing a Scottish kilt in public on multiple occasions for no particular reason. And on his various ranches, he breeds exotic and endangered animals, tapirs, hippos, rare Indonesian buffalo. Not as a zoo project, just because he wants to. He also operates Calumet Farm in Kentucky, one of the most historic thoroughbred horse farms in America. He lives quietly in Franklin, Tennessee, away from Nashville's social scene, and engages with the state primarily through its agricultural and equine communities. Brad Kelly is what you get when $1 billion meets a completely original personality and zero interest in anyone's approval. And while the land baron has set the scene, the next family owns something considerably more visible on a Sunday afternoon in Nashville. Number 7. The Adams family, the Titans, and the East Bank. Amy Adams. Strunk doesn't get talked about the way the Haslams or the Frists do, but she controls the most emotionally valuable asset in the state, the Tennessee Titans, and she's currently in the middle of reshaping the physical geography of Nashville in a way that will last for generations. The Adams family wealth, estimated at $2.8 billion, comes from the NFL franchise and a legacy of oil and gas interests through KSA Industries, built by the late Bud Adams, who founded the franchise and brought professional football to Tennessee. When Bud passed, the ownership structure got complicated, split between his daughters and the family of his deceased son, with competing interests pulling in different directions. In 2020, Amy consolidated control by buying out her sister Susie's shares entirely. Clean, decisive. The team is now hers, and she is deeply hands-on, present on the sidelines, involved in key hiring decisions, running it the way someone runs something they genuinely intend to keep forever. The current story, though, is the stadium. A $2.1 billion enclosed stadium on Nashville's East Bank, the largest urban development project in the city's history. The deal involves $840 million in family funding alongside state and local contributions, and it unlocks 66 acres of prime riverfront real estate for redevelopment, a new boulevard, affordable housing, a massive riverside park. What looks like a sports venue is actually a city reshaping instrument, and the Adams family is at the center of it. Think about that for a second. One woman, one franchise, one stadium deal. And Nashville's skyline and East Bank look fundamentally different for the next 50 years. And now, the next family reshaped an entire industry. And did it starting with a foosball table in a college bar. Number 6. The Yarro family. The sleeper investor of Franklin. John Yarro is the kind of billionaire most people have never heard of, and he prefers it that way. He lives in Franklin, runs a quiet family office, manages his own portfolio personally, and has turned a $1.28 billion exit into one of the most thoughtfully constructed private fortunes in the state. Net worth: $5.4 billion. The origin story is genuinely one of the best on this list. Yarro was a student at Tennessee Tech with no money and a simple idea: lease a foosball table to a local bar, split the profits with the owner, repeat. That instinct, identify an underserved market, own the infrastructure, collect recurring revenue, never left him. He took it, scaled it, and in 1991 founded Video Gaming Technologies in his garage. VGT became the dominant supplier of gaming machines to Native American tribal casinos, eventually running over 20,000 machines nationwide. In 2014, Australian firm Aristocrat Leisure acquired it for $1.28 billion in cash. One garage, one exit, clean. What he did next is the part that separates serious wealth builders from lucky ones. He invested that capital into a concentrated portfolio of technology companies: NVIDIA, Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, and held. He invested $30,000 in Microsoft's IPO in 1986 and kept it for decades. When the Cambridge Analytica scandal cratered Facebook's stock and most investors were running for the exit, Yarro doubled down and bought more. He still has that original foosball table in his office, which is either deeply sentimental or the world's most effective reminder of where compound interest actually starts. Let's move on to our next family, who is considerably louder, and they've been in nearly every headline in Tennessee for the past decade. Number 5, the Haslam Family. The petroleum and political powerhouse. The Haslams are what happens when a family builds a fuel empire, sells it to Warren Buffett, and still has time to own 2 professional sports teams and run the state government. Combined family wealth sits at over $14.4 billion. Bill at $6 billion, Jimmy at $4.8 billion, making them the most politically and commercially connected dynasty in Tennessee. The foundation is Pilot Flying J, the truck stop and travel center chain that the Haslams built into the largest network of its kind in North America. In 2024, Berkshire Hathaway completed its full acquisition of the company, Buffett paying a premium for the remaining 20% stake, leaving the family with one of the largest cash positions in the southern United States. When Warren Buffett pays a premium to buy your company outright, the valuation thesis has been thoroughly validated. Bill Haslam served as governor of Tennessee from 2011 to 2019, a period during which he was consistently identified as the wealthiest elected official in America. His Tennessee Promise program, tuition-free community college for state residents, is his most lasting civic legacy. He also oversaw the elimination of inheritance and gift taxes during his tenure, which critics noted benefited exactly the kind of multi-generational wealth sitting in families like his. Make of that what you will. Jimmy, meanwhile, owns the Cleveland Browns. And if you follow the NFL, you already know that particular ownership experience has not been without its complications. But the real story, the one that almost brought the whole thing down, is 2013. Federal agents raided Pilot Flying J headquarters in Knoxville as part of a fraud investigation into a scheme that cheated trucking companies out of fuel rebates. 14 executives eventually pleaded guilty. Jimmy was never charged, but a secret recording captured a sales executive, nicknamed Stick, bragging that Jimmy knew it all along and loved it. The recording exists. The charges never came. Jimmy sold the company to Berkshire Hathaway for a premium. Some stories don't have a clean ending. They just have a next chapter. Now here's how the next family built their empire on something considerably more wholesome. And their origin story begins with a single overturned pot of soup. Number 4. The Smith Family. FedEx and the Memphis Machine. Fred Smith got a C on the Yale economics paper that contained the original business plan for FedEx. His professor reportedly called the idea impractical. Smith went ahead and built it anyway, and in doing so created not just a company but an entirely new category of global commerce. He passed away in 2025, leaving behind a family fortune of $5.3 billion and a company that employs over 13,000 people in Memphis alone. The idea was elegant in hindsight, Use Memphis as a central hub, route all packages through it overnight, and have them distributed outward by morning. The hub and spoke model. Memphis was chosen for its central geography and famously mild weather. Almost no ice or snow to delay flights. Today, Memphis International Airport is one of the busiest cargo airports on Earth, and it exists in its current form largely because of Fred Smith's decision to plant FedEx there in 1971. He started with a $4 million inheritance and a concept. The early years were brutal. At one point, the company couldn't make payroll or pay its fuel bills. With $5,000 left, the last money the company had, Smith flew to Las Vegas, sat down at a blackjack table, and won $27,000. He wired it back to Memphis. FedEx survived one more week. Then it found a way to survive another and another, until it didn't need luck anymore. Smith was also a decorated Marine Corps veteran, Silver Star, Bronze Star, 2 Purple Hearts. And that military ethic of discipline and service ran through everything FedEx became culturally. His son Richard is a FedEx executive. His son Arthur is a prominent NFL head coach. The family remains woven into Memphis's civic life through the National Civil Rights Museum, the Memphis Zoo, and the University of Memphis. In that city, the Smith name is not just a business legacy, it's infrastructure. And now we move to the family that built Tennessee's cultural backbone, the one that owns the rivers, the books, and the soccer stadium. Number 3. The Ingram family, the infrastructure and arts architects. Most billionaire families own something visible. The Ingrams own everything in between: the distribution networks, the waterways, the wholesale infrastructure that makes everyone else's business actually function. They are the connective tissue of Tennessee's economy, and most people have no idea. The Ingram fortune, approximately $6.3 billion, is rooted in 2 businesses that don't sound glamorous until you understand their scale. Ingram Marine Group operates over 5,000 barges and 140 tugboats across America's inland waterways, moving grain and industrial materials in volumes that would fill entire train networks. Ingram Content Group is the largest wholesale distributor of books in the world, the company that Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and virtually every other major bookseller rely on to actually fulfill orders. Between those two, the family quietly controls the movement of physical goods across an enormous portion of the country. Martha Ingram, the family's matriarch, inherited the business in 1995 after the death of her husband Bronson and spent the next decade modernizing and consolidating the conglomerate before passing the operational reins to her sons Orrin and John. But her most lasting contribution to Tennessee isn't commercial, it's cultural. She was the driving force behind the Tennessee Performing Arts Center, a project that required 8 years of work and navigating 3 different governors. She co-founded the Schermerhorn Symphony Center. She chaired the Vanderbilt University Board of Trust. She donated over $300 million to civic institutions across the state. John Ingram now owns the Nashville Soccer Club and was the key figure in developing Geodis Park, the largest soccer-specific stadium in the United States and Canada. The family that moves grain on the rivers and ships? Books across the country also built the biggest soccer venue on the continent. The range is quietly extraordinary. And with 2 spots left, the scale from here on becomes something else entirely. Number 2. The Snyder family, the in-out empire comes east. Lindsay Snyder is 42 years old, worth $8.7 billion, and is the sole owner of one of the most fiercely protected private brands in American food history. In-N-Out Burger has never franchised, never gone public, never taken outside investment. It is 100% privately owned, 100% family-controlled, and under Lindsay's ownership, it intends to stay exactly that way, indefinitely. She inherited the company gradually, with her final ownership stake vesting on her 35th birthday per the terms of her family's trust. And when she got full control, one of the first major decisions she made was to leave California. In 2024, she broke ground on a massive Eastern Territory headquarters in Franklin, Tennessee, on a road named, with complete sincerity, 1948 Double Drive, a reference to the year the company was founded and its most iconic menu item. The first In-N-Out restaurants in the Southeast are expected to open by late 2025 or early 2026, and Franklin is the operational base from which that expansion will be managed. The move was announced alongside Governor Bill Lee, which tells you something about how Tennessee's government views her arrival. High-paying executive jobs, logistical infrastructure, and one of America's most beloved brands relocating its eastern operations to Williamson County. That's not a business story, it's an economic development headline. But Lindsay's personal story is the part that genuinely stops you. She survived 2 kidnapping attempts in her youth. Her father, Guy Snyder, died of a prescription drug overdose in 1999 when she was a teenager. She has spoken publicly about years of trying to fill that loss in the wrong ways. 4 marriages, 4 children, a long period of spiritual searching that eventually led her to evangelical Christianity. She and her husband, Sean Ellingson, now lead a ministry called the Army of Love, focused on spiritual healing and what she describes as warfare against spiritual darkness. In the Bible Belt culture of Middle Tennessee, that's not a niche identity. It's a direct line into the heart of the community she's just joined. She is simultaneously one of the most powerful food industry executives in the country and one of the most personally open public figures in American business. That combination, in Tennessee, makes her more than a billionaire. It makes her a cultural figure. And our number 1 spot belongs to the family that didn't just build a business in this state. They built the entire template for how modern healthcare operates in America. Number 1. The Frist Family, the medical monarchy of Nashville. Here is a simple fact that reframes everything. For every dollar spent on healthcare in America, a portion of the infrastructure, the billing system, and the hospital model behind that transaction was shaped, directly or indirectly, by the Frist family of Nashville. Their net worth exceeds $38.9 billion. Their company, HCA Healthcare, operates over 180 hospitals and 2,400 sites of care across 20 states and the United Kingdom. They are the reason Nashville is the healthcare capital of the world, and not by accident. The insight that started everything was deceptively simple. In 1968, Dr. Thomas Frist Sr., his son Thomas Frist Jr., and businessman Jack Massey looked at the booming American retail chain model and asked, why can't hospitals work the same way? Centralized purchasing, standardized management, economies of scale applied to medicine. The Hospital Corporation of America was the answer. It was a genuinely new idea at the time, and it changed the entire structure of the American healthcare industry within a generation. The pivotal financial moment came in 2006, when Thomas Frist Jr. orchestrated the leveraged buyout of HCA, a $33 billion deal with Bain Capital, KKR, and Merrill Lynch that was, at the time, the largest LBO in history. The company went private, restructured, and returned to public markets in 2011, with the Frist family maintaining a significant equity stake. As healthcare costs and hospital valuations climbed over the following decade, that stake appreciated dramatically. Their net worth grew by 108% between 2020 and 2021 alone. But here's the part that elevates the Frists beyond simply being a wealthy healthcare family: the political dimension. Bill Frist, Thomas Jr.'s brother, served as U.S. Senate Majority Leader from 2003 to 2007. During that period, he championed the Medicare Modernization Act, among other legislation that fundamentally shaped the regulatory environment for the very industry his family owned. A family that builds the hospitals, writes the policies governing hospitals, and benefits financially from those policies is operating at a level of systemic influence that most dynasties never approach. They live in Belmead, Nashville's most exclusive enclave, in an $18 million estate that functions as the unofficial social headquarters for the state's elite. Their philanthropy is deliberately institutional. The Frist Art Museum, the Frist Foundation, and the Thomas F. Frist Jr. College of Medicine at Belmont University ensure the family name is permanently woven into Nashville's civic, cultural, and educational identity. These aren't donations, they're anchors, permanent attachments to institutions that will carry the Frist name long after the current generation is gone. The Frists are number 1 not just because of the size of the fortune, it's because of the architecture of the influence. They built the industry, shaped the legislation, funded the institutions, and named the buildings. In Tennessee, that is what total ownership actually looks like. And that's a wrap on the richest dynasties that own Tennessee. Which family surprised you most? Drop it in the comments. And for more such interesting peeks into the lives of the rich, subscribe to Global Status.